In everyone's life, there are people whose arrival leaves an indelible mark on their destiny. Some enter quietly and subtly like a gentle breeze, gradually changing the very essence of existence, filling life with new colors and sensations. Others burst in like a hurricane, sweeping away everything in their path, leaving behind chaos and confusion, along with a multitude of questions that seem impossible to answer. Why did this particular person appear in life? Where does the feeling of long-standing familiarity, of an inexplicable connection come from? And why, even when experiencing pain, is it impossible to break this connection? If such questions have ever arisen in your mind, then prepare for a journey deep into the human soul, into the mysterious realm known as destined love. However, this will not be a simple immersion into a world of romantic dreams and magical rituals. We will explore this topic through the teachings of one of the most outstanding psychologists in history, Carl Jung. It is his perspective on the unconscious, the soul, and archetypal connections that will help us understand whether the person occupying our thoughts is truly destined or whether their appearance is merely a reflection of an unhealed wound. Jung argued that the people we attract into our lives are not random, but a mirror reflecting what is not yet acknowledged, accepted, and healed within us. Realizing this fact radically changes the perception of love. It ceases to be a desperate search and becomes a fascinating journey of self-discovery and personal growth. This material has the potential to transform the viewer, as it will focus not only on the partner but also on themselves, their relationships, and the deep childhood traumas that, often unconsciously, are repeated time and again in their personal lives. The viewer will see how these wounds can become a starting point for a more conscious, free, and authentic love. This content will present tools based on Jungian psychology to help determine whether the person occupying your thoughts and feelings is someone meant to teach an important lesson or someone you are destined to be with for a long time. All of this will be presented without cliches and empty promises, but with sincerity, depth, and soulfulness. It is important to understand that destined love, from Jung's perspective, is not something actively sought, but something that unfolds gradually. But this is only possible when a person is ready to look within themselves, because the soul falls in love not with another person, but with the reflection of itself that it finds in them. This discovery can be either a wonderful enlightenment or a painful confrontation with reality. Perhaps you are watching this video because you cannot let go of the past, feeling an invisible connection that unites you with another person beyond time, pain, and logic. Or perhaps you are at the beginning of a new relationship and wondering if this time will be different, whether this person is the one, and whether there are signs that confirm your feelings. This material will provide answers to these questions, delving into the depths of the psyche. Carl Jung, a prominent researcher of the human psyche, argued that in the depths of the collective unconscious lie archetypes, symbols, powerful impulses, and inexhaustible energy passed down from generation to generation. Love, according to his theory, is often awakened not by rational thinking, but by echoes of these ancient, mythical territories of the soul. That is why true love does not always meet a person's expectations and ideas. Sometimes it brings suffering, causes internal discomfort, but always transforms the individual, encouraging self-improvement and the realization of potential. The task here is not to tell a beautiful fairy tale about love, but to awaken awareness and offer a new perspective on relationships. The goal is to teach you to recognize when a person is a true gift from fate and when they are merely a disguised repetition of past mistakes and traumas. After all, not all that glitters is gold, and not all pain indicates loss. The narrative will touch on the topic of synchronicity, a concept developed by Jung to explain mysterious coincidences when certain people appear in life at the most needed moment. We will also consider the phenomenon of projections, when a person falls in love not with a real partner, but with an idealized image created by their own imagination. And of course, we will offer tools to debunk these illusions, to see the other person as they really are, without embellishment and self-deception. At the same time, we will talk about those rare encounters of souls, about bonds that are alien to manipulation and obsessiveness because they are based on authenticity of feelings, unwavering truth, and mutual respect. You will learn to unmistakably recognize such unions because there are unambiguous, deep, and spiritual signs that allow you to distinguish destined love from love dictated by circumstances. This narrative is for those who have found their soulmate, those who have experienced love and the bitterness of loss, and those who still struggle to understand why they can't forget the past. It's for those striving to break the vicious cycle of repeated mistakes, those yearning to love without losing their individuality, and those ready to transform in the art of building relationships. This discussion will delve into sensitive topics. You will be asked questions you may not have considered before, and some answers may cause discomfort, but this discomfort is an integral part of spiritual awakening. If you stay until the end, you will undoubtedly view your relationships from a completely different, more conscious perspective. Many psychology experts avoid discussing predestined love, considering the idea overly mystical or romantic. However, the eminent psychologist Jung disagreed, recognizing that there are deep soul processes that cannot be explained solely through logic, connections that escape superficial analysis, and that recognizing them unlocks a new, transformed understanding of love. Perhaps circumstances have made watching this video seem ill-timed. Maybe you stumbled upon it accidentally without intentionally searching. However, if you're here, it's not mere coincidence. Your soul has led you here because deep within, you are ready to comprehend love from a more mature, authentic, and profound perspective. The answer offered won't be a magic formula, but a reliable guide, and this video will be a kind of emotional map. After watching, you'll be able to determine without a doubt whether a particular person is a catalyst for personal growth or an illusion holding you captive. This understanding will come not from the author's words, but from a deep inner sensation encompassing your body, mind, and heart. To grasp this information, you don't need a psychology degree, only courage. The courage to look inside yourself, ask yourself honest questions, abandon painful attachments, acknowledge the existing reality, and free yourself from what only seems to be. We'll be discussing anima and animus, Jungian archetypes residing in everyone's subconscious, determining how they fall in love. You'll gain insight into how deep energy flows shape attraction, create expectations, and influence painful breakups. With this knowledge, you can make choices consciously, not under the influence of emotional wounds. If you've ever felt a sense of destiny in meeting someone but weren't sure, the tools offered will help you find the answer, relying on your inner truth, not emotional attachment. If you're tormented by why you can't forget someone, the nature of this feeling will be revealed, true love or merely an unresolved projection. It's important to realize that the feelings you experience are normal. Loving someone who has hurt you doesn't make you broken. It's simply evidence that you're a living person capable of feeling. You'll understand that love not only connects hearts, but also brings hidden shadows to the surface. Only those who pass through these shadows can truly love, radiating light. This channel was created with the belief that psychological knowledge can save lives, help you let go of the past, heal, and understand yourself. If these words resonate with your soul, stay. Today may be the beginning of a new stage in your emotional development. If the content resonates with you, prepare for the information to be not just a collection of facts, but an emotional, transformative, and therapeutic experience. You'll hear words you may have been waiting for years to hear, and most importantly, they will become your own. This isn't just another video, but an event capable of changing your worldview. Carl Jung once remarked that people meet only when they have already met themselves. This profound thought is the quintessence of what you need to integrate into your life. After all, many wonder, is this the one? Is this my destiny? And the answer isn't found in logical reasoning, fears, or desperate need. The answer lies only in the depths of your soul, in a consciousness that dared to know itself to the very bottom, unafraid of its own dark sides. According to Jung, true love is a manifestation of individuation, a complex process of becoming a person. He viewed love not as some external force suddenly befalling a person, but as a natural result of a long and difficult internal search. Jung asserted that awakening consciousness is impossible without pain. Love, if it is genuine, inevitably awakens us, but not with illusions and fantasies, but with the harsh truth of life. So how do you know if a person is meant for you? The first key that depth psychology offers is an honest question to yourself. Does this relationship stimulate my personal growth, or does it doom me to stagnation? Carl Jung, a prominent Swiss psychologist, argued that any significant encounter in a person's life inevitably entails an internal conflict, as the soul strives for development and change. If a person awakens dormant aspects of our essence, hidden desires, unhealed wounds, forgotten callings and important questions, then we are faced with a kind of mirror that reflects our inner self. This, of course, is not a guarantee of eternal relationships, but it does guarantee deep personal transformation. There is a common misconception that love destined by fate should be comfortable and serene. Jung held the exact opposite point of view. Love that arises in our life for a specific purpose often destabilizes us, throws us off balance and brings us face to face with ourselves. After all, its task is not to indulge our weaknesses and whims, but to unlock our potential and help us become better. Jung wrote, "What you deny submits you, what you accept transforms you." In genuine relationships, a partner often embodies the very qualities or traits that we stubbornly refuse to notice in ourselves. Here is an exercise to try. Close your eyes and mentally imagine this person. What emotions do they evoke in you? What facets of your personality manifest in their presence? What memories from the past surface in your mind? Now, honestly ask yourself, do I see this person as they really are, or am I projecting my expectations and needs onto them? Do I love them as an individual, or am I using them to fill internal voids that I am afraid to look into? Jung compared the meeting of two people to the contact of two chemical substances. If a reaction occurs, both elements are transformed. If, in the presence of another person, you remain completely unchanged, then most likely it is not love, but only comfortable coexistence. True love is not conservation, but expansion of horizons. It is a flame that ignites the soul and pushes it to develop. In the depths of the human psyche lies a phenomenon that can be described as emotional alchemy. If an individual repeatedly reproduces the same scenarios, attracting people of similar types into their life, albeit with different faces, but united by a common background, then, according to Jung's teachings, this indicates not love, but projection. Projections are unconscious illusions that a person tends to impose on others. Often these projections are mistakenly taken as signs of fate, although in reality they are only a reflection of internal wounds seeking to break free. Jung warned that enlightenment cannot be attained by merely imagining bright images. It is necessary to recognize and accept one's darkness. The question arises, is a person ready to look at their own darkness with love and compassion? Are they ready to stop searching for love that should save them, and instead become the one who saves themselves? True love, destined by fate, comes not in a moment of need, but when a person is ready for it. It appears when the soul no longer feels an acute need for it, but is able to recognize it in tranquility and harmony. As an exercise for self-analysis, write down on a piece of paper what exactly you were looking for at the moment when a certain person appeared in your life. It is important to be extremely honest with yourself. Were you looking for security, approval, company, admiration? Or were you in a state of peace with yourself, and this person simply arose as someone resonating with your inner calm? Jung argued that the soul communicates through symbols, and the people who enter our lives are also symbols carrying a certain meaning. This person becomes a symbol of a complex interweaving of feelings where true love is sometimes indistinguishable from attachment, echoes of past traumas or fear of loneliness. In this situation, Carl Jung calls for careful self-analysis, for the separation of heartfelt impulses and selfish desires. A genuine feeling is devoid of obsessiveness. It is like a river flowing calmly in its channel. The Jungian concept of anima and animus, embodying the masculine and feminine principles in each individual, plays a key role here. By projecting these internal images onto others, a person may mistakenly take them for the love of their life, while their attraction is directed only at their own unacknowledged self. According to Jung, being in love often turns out to be nothing more than a reflection of the unconscious in another person. How do you distinguish a real connection from a simple projection? It's important to be able to see another person's flaws without losing respect for them. You need to understand whether the world falls apart when your partner doesn't meet your expectations, or if you retain the ability to love based on understanding. True love isn't based on idealizing your partner, but on deeply and unconditionally accepting them with all their human weaknesses and shortcomings. Let's turn to the concept of synchronicity, introduced into scientific discourse by Carl Jung, to describe amazing coincidences that strike you with their accuracy and apparent hidden meaning. If someone came into your life at a turning point, when important changes were taking place in your soul, you shouldn't ignore that sign. Synchronicity can be seen as the language the soul itself speaks. However, you should be careful because the presence of a signal doesn't always indicate a predetermined shared destiny. Sometimes it's just a message addressed to you personally. It's important to remember that, according to Jung, true love isn't flawless. Rather, it's characterized by integrity, integration, and a willingness to accept pain, providing the tools to overcome it. Such love doesn't make empty promises of eternal happiness, but guarantees a transformation of personality on a deep level. Destined love, according to Jung, helps unlock a person's potential, helping them become who they were originally meant to be. As a practical exercise, write down 3 qualities of your partner that cause you the most pain. Then, next to each of them, indicate the aspects of your own personality that you need to strengthen so that you don't depend on these wounds. As a result, it will become clear that the source of suffering isn't just the behavior of another person, but also the fact that we've stopped giving ourselves what we need. Jung taught that our searches in the external world are, in essence, a call to self-improvement and filling internal gaps. You should remember that the most valuable thing we seek is often there, where we least want to look, and this fully applies to the sphere of love. Sometimes we mistakenly take a person for our soulmate simply because they evoke strong emotions. However, the intensity of feelings doesn't always indicate a deep connection. Sometimes it's just the activation of old traumas. Without realizing this difference, we risk repeating the same destructive scenarios in relationships with different partners. Predestined bonds aren't a fairy tale stream of serenity, but a conscious choice of 2 personalities ready for mutual growth and support. It's a union based on freedom, not on painful dependence where sincerity replaces falsehood. It's a continuous path of development, not a desire for possession. Instead of ready-made formulas, directions are offered that are designed to discard romantic illusions and face emotional reality. The truth is that it's impossible to determine whether a person is destined for you until you yourself become a whole personality, capable of self-support and self-expression. If there's an obsessive desire to hold on to someone who doesn't reciprocate, you should ask yourself, is it love or fear of loneliness? Why is confirmation of your own importance from another person so necessary? Often people mistakenly believe that destined love is salvation, but the true purpose is in a joint journey, in support and accompaniment. Awareness of this doesn't come immediately. As Jung said, you can understand life only by looking back, although we live by moving forward. Therefore, if doubts torment your soul, you shouldn't indulge in self-flagellation. Listen to the world, heed its lessons, because truth is born in silence, not in the chaos of confusion. In conclusion to this chapter of self-knowledge, the author offers the reader a bold challenge. For 7 days, with every thought about the person of interest, instead of asking about the reciprocity of feelings, ask yourself about the personal growth that this experience brings. It's in this answer that all the necessary truth lies. And if these words resonated in the reader's soul, the author urges them to imprint the phrase in the comments, "True love transforms me, it doesn't destroy me." Let this become a symbol. of readiness to love consciously, abandoning need and choosing the path of creation. The great psychologist Carl Jung left an invaluable teaching that must be remembered when reasoning about love. He argued that the main goal of relationships is to promote the development of the inner integrity of the personality. This thought radically changes the perspective. It's not about finding the perfect partner, but about finding someone who will help you see yourself in all your fullness, even in those aspects that you would like to hide. Speaking of the soul, Jung meant not religious spirituality, but the psychological depth of the human being. The human psyche has its own deep wisdom, hidden intention, and a unique direction of evolutionary development. When the soul feels the need for growth and development, it acts like a magnet, attracting into an individual's life those people who can catalyze this process. Thus, true destined love is not a union that avoids conflicts and contradictions. On the contrary, it is a connection that exposes to a person those aspects of their personality that have not yet been accepted and integrated into the holistic self. If a relationship pushes one to heal old emotional wounds, to deeply understand one's own emotions, and to rethink established behavioral patterns, then it is very likely that the person is at the epicenter of a deeply meaningful connection in the embrace of that very destined love. Perhaps the point is not what the partner represents, but what they are meant to awaken in the reflection of the inner world. The renowned psychologist Carl Jung did not recognize emotional randomness. He argued that any event colored by strong emotions, whether it is the birth of love or a painful breakup, has deep roots in the unconscious. What enters a person's life comes with a specific purpose, to show something important. And if the lesson is not learned, life will repeat it again and again, changing the scenery, faces, and stories, but keeping the basic background unchanged. In this context, one can delicately refer to the ideas of Sigmund Freud. Despite philosophical differences, Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung shared the belief that the roots of love relationships go deep into childhood. The scenario of relationships with parents, whether it is detachment, excessive criticism, or all-forgiving indulgence, is often unconsciously reproduced in adulthood. However, Jung expanded this concept, viewing the personality as striving for wholeness. Destined love, in his opinion, does not simply repeat past traumas, but serves as a guide on the path to this wholeness. Unfortunately, many people get stuck in the world of projections, failing to achieve personality integration. Jung emphasized that loneliness arises not from the absence of a partner, but from the inability to share innermost thoughts and feelings. This is an important indicator of compatibility with a partner. The ability to openly express one's inner world, to be accepted in its entirety, including the dark sides, is a key factor. Considering the concept of the shadow, Jung proposed a liberating concept. The shadow is not just negative traits, but suppressed aspects of personality. Hidden traits, such as jealousy, submissiveness, or dependence, can be activated in relationships. The appearance of these traits indicates the need to pay attention to these aspects of personality. Thus, destined love does not always seem like an ideal story, but rather becomes an opportunity to see and accept one's wholeness. This story makes everyone think about their own essence in the context of interpersonal relationships, prompting self-analysis. Do these relationships contribute to personal growth and self-realization, or do they force one to compromise their identity in order to meet the expectations of a partner? In this regard, it is appropriate to recall the words of Viktor Frankl, who emphasized that true love lies in a deep understanding of another person, in the desire to understand their inner world, and not in attempts to change them. A genuine connection arises when a partner accepts you as you are, striving to see your uniqueness and not to fit you into a certain template. However, caution should be exercised, as Carl Jung warned, being wary of attachment to relationships based solely on the intensity of experiences, since not all strong feelings indicate the authenticity of a connection. At times, people come into our lives blinding us with emotional heat, which is mistakenly taken for love, but is actually only an echo of inner needs and unrealized desires. In such a whirlwind of passions, it is easy to lose oneself if there is no clear understanding of one's own personality, and to mistake a fleeting infatuation for a fateful encounter. Erich Fromm, in turn, noted the difference between immature and mature love. The first is characterized by a selfish desire to possess, expressed by the formula, "I love you because I need you," while the second is based on unconditional acceptance and support, saying, "I need you because I love you." Jung also adhered to this point of view, emphasizing the importance of individuation, the process of becoming a whole personality. True love arises when two self-sufficient personalities meet not to dissolve into each other, but to walk the path of life together, supporting and inspiring each other to personal growth. Dependence arises when the need for another person becomes a means of self-identification. True love manifests itself in the ability of a partner to contribute to personal growth, even in moments of disagreement. The soul strives not for the ideal, but for a genuine connection capable of withstanding the test of truth, no matter how bitter it may be. Carl Jung spoke of myths, archetypes, and symbols that awaken the soul. The feeling of love, as if from past lives, is often filled with deep unconscious meaning. It is important not to underestimate its significance, but also not to idealize it. Sometimes karmic connections are given to learn to let go, not to hold on. How can you distinguish true love from romantic illusions? Projections crumble when reality does not meet expectations. True love implies change, adaptation, and transformation, requiring not perfection, but presence. Jung argued that the irritation we feel towards others can lead to understanding ourselves. This is also true for love, because any relationship exposes our boundaries, traumas, and shortcomings. Fated love does not eliminate the need to work on oneself, but rather intensifies this need. Everyone who embarks on a path of relationships sooner or later encounters painful moments that become a reflection of their internal conflicts and unresolved problems. It is in these difficult situations that the keys to self-knowledge and spiritual awakening lie. Take, for example, a situation where there is constant neglect and alienation in a relationship. This painful experience can be a mirror image of one's own abandonment, inability to take care of oneself and meet one's needs, or conversely, the need for total control over a partner may signal a fear of losing control over one's own life, a deep-seated insecurity. Devaluation by a loved one painfully resonates with those who themselves tend to belittle their merits and achievements, who do not believe in their value. True intimacy, as the eminent psychologist Carl Jung emphasized, lies not in comfort and serenity, but in evolution and growth. A destined partner will not demand the abandonment of one's own personality. On the contrary, they will inspire the rescretia potential and self-improvement. They will support you in moments of weakness and point out mistakes when you go astray. If a relationship requires constant suppression of your feelings and desires, then this is a sure sign that it does not bring true happiness and development. It is important to ask yourself an honest question. Does this person contribute to the disclosure of your deep calling? Is it possible to openly talk about your fears, dreams, and contradictions without fear of condemnation or misunderstanding? Or is communication limited to superficial topics that do not touch the soul? The answers to these questions will help you understand how much the relationship contributes to personal growth and brings you closer to that destined love, where you can be vulnerable and strong at the same time, where you can heal your wounds without fear. Relationships between people are characterized not only by harmony and mutual understanding, but also by the ability to withstand trials, maintaining the integrity of the personality. True love manifests itself in the ability to overcome disagreements, find compromises, and support each other without allowing destructive conflicts. It involves a constant striving for creation, open dialogue, and devotion, excluding sudden disappearances and unjustified silence. If a union is more exhausting than energizing, then, as Jung argued, it lacks a spiritual component. There is only a negative shadow. You should not blame yourself for the initial choice, but you must be aware of the responsibility for further stay in such a relationship. Genuine awareness begins from the moment a person ceases to justify their own suffering. Love, destined by fate, does not require pretense and manipulation. It does not need constant assurances and proofs. It only needs an open heart, an awakened mind, and an unwavering determination to build strong and sincere relationships. Some connections serve as a mirror, reflecting our virtues and shortcomings, while others act as mentors, teaching valuable lessons. However, from a Jungian perspective, the most significant are those relationships that allow you to look at yourself with ruthless honesty, without hiding emotional wounds and without embellishing reality. Carl Jung, an outstanding Swiss psychiatrist and founder of analytical psychology, would hardly advise blindly seeking love that gives only unclouded happiness. Rather, he would urge you to take a close look at the person who awakens hitherto unknown feelings in you, even if they are associated with emotional pain. It is important not to idealize the person who causes internal conflict, but to understand whether this confrontation stems from mutual respect or from a desire for domination. Jung viewed individuation as a complex process in which the human soul is freed from the shackles of social conditioning, striving for wholeness. True love does not hinder this process but accompanies it, provides support, and even helps to accelerate it. One crucial aspect often overlooked is a partner's ability to help you reconnect with yourself when you feel lost. If someone can remind you of your true essence during moments of confusion, if their presence doesn't distance you from yourself, but, on the contrary, brings you back, then you're in a relationship with profound meaning. However, some connections seem to engulf us, awakening our most primitive, anxious, and dependent sides. Jung warned that if a person is unaware of their unconscious, it will control their life, and they will call it fate. Therefore, understanding the deep motives behind our attractions and preferences is crucial. Often we mistakenly believe that someone destined for us is actually someone who is merely stirring up old emotional wounds under a new guise. There is an effective way to understand the true nature of such relationships. Meticulously record the most sincere moments experienced with that person. Focus not on idealized romantic scenes, but on genuine situations where you appeared without masks or pretense. Then honestly answer the question, did this person accept you in those moments, or did they distance themselves? True love only arises when the need for pretense and role-playing disappears. Carl Jung urged us to carefully analyze the symbolic meaning of our relationships. Every event in a relationship has a deep psychological and archetypal subtext. It's important to understand whether this person is merely a projection of a mother, father, or savior figure for you. Are you able to see them as an individual with their own strengths and weaknesses? The stronger the archetypal perception of another person, the more projections and illusions will be present in your love. In clinical practice, patients often believe that the intensity of feelings is proof of their authenticity. However, as Jung noted, strong emotions can be a manifestation of deeply rooted unconscious processes. Jung emphasized that love should be permeated with awareness, not to suppress it, but to cleanse it of the superficial and imposed. Emotional pain, devoid of understanding and meaning, tends to be reworked and transformed, opening the way to healing and growth. People are sometimes inclined to seek the source of their past suffering again, without realizing the true motives that drive them. It is in such moments that depth psychology comes to the rescue. Genuine healing from recurring scenarios becomes possible only when their root cause is understood. True relationships, destined by fate, do not require abandoning one's essence. On the contrary, they contribute to its perfection, strengthening, and recognition. If a person in a relationship feels the need to change in order to earn love, then such a connection is more likely dictated by need than predetermined by fate. As Carl Jung wrote, the meeting with oneself begins with the meeting with one's own shadow. If love leads to such internal discoveries, don't reject it because of the accompanying pain. Perhaps this is exactly what the soul needs for further evolution. In true relationships, a person can openly express their feelings without fear of judgment. The partner will listen, even if they don't fully understand. You can bare your mind without feeling vulnerable, because love based on mutual trust excludes emotional rivalry. The soul has its own rhythm, which doesn't always coincide with human expectations. Sometimes this feeling overtakes a person at a moment of complete unpreparedness, or appears when hope has already faded, but it is always legitimate. Carl Jung was convinced that the symbols of the soul manifest in their own time. Therefore, don't rush events, don't try to force them, but simply observe the internal changes that arise with the appearance of another person. Not every feeling perceived as love is actually love. There are attractions based on shared emotional wounds, on echoes of past traumas, on the desire to fill an internal void. But true love is different. It doesn't seek to become an addition to the personality, but recognizes its integrity, and based on this, chooses a joint path. The main sign here is this: love destined by fate doesn't conflict with the inner self. It can pose a challenge, certainly. It can enter into confrontation, but it doesn't drag you into places where you lose yourself. If every love experience ends in even greater confusion than before, perhaps emotional chaos is being mistaken for love. It's important to remember that true love is determined not by the amount of time spent together, but by the depth of the connection that has arisen. There are people who, in 3 weeks, are able to heal wounds inflicted by others over long 5 years. Release the obsessive thoughts about time and focus on the emotional sincerity that permeates your relationships. In light of Jungian psychology, love appears as a portal to self-discovery. If a union does not contribute to deepening your inner truth, it may not be the right path. Destiny is not a predetermined choice imposed on you from the outside, but rather the result of conscious construction based on the voice of your soul. Carl Jung spoke of the alchemy of the soul, and in the context of love, this means the following. If both partners are ready for transformation, for the symbolic death of the old selves, for the sake of rebirth into more complete personalities, then such love has true value. If only one strives for change and the other resists, harmony is disrupted. Chemistry alone is not enough, nor are common plans and goals. The key factor is the presence of a unified internal compass. Love destined for you does not simply accompany you on your life path, it leads you to a common horizon, even if each of you moves at your own pace. And this horizon is always the horizon of authenticity. With such a person, you can be defenseless without fear of judgment. You can cry out your sorrows without feeling ashamed. You can share your contradictions without fear that they will be used against you. Destined love does not hoard ammunition. It creates space for sincerity and acceptance. Creating true love is a task that requires courage and introspection, a willingness to look deep within yourself and take difficult steps. When a person's inner world matures for such a union, it attracts a kindred spirit. The essence of true love lies in the meeting of equals, where the measure is not power or success, but devotion to spiritual growth. Although Carl Jung did not claim that love is a universal cure, he emphasized its ability to reveal hidden wounds that require healing. This revelation, although painful, disrupting the usual course of things, and not always in line with personal plans, is a most valuable gift. When anxiety gives way to clarity and energy abounds near a particular person, it serves as a powerful signal. True love is defined not by fleeting euphoria, but by a sense of deep peace and inner comfort. If a union encourages self-improvement, whether through psychotherapy, reading, or rethinking life attitudes, do not ignore these signs. Even if this person does not become a lifelong companion, their appearance can open new horizons. Once you open the inner door, it is impossible to close it without betraying a part of yourself. True love does not need endless assurances. It manifests in actions, in sincerity and care, which become its eloquent confirmation. If a person is constantly tormented by doubts about their own worth, then this is no longer love, but a mental wound that requires healing. Striving to see an ideal partner in someone is not able to turn that person into someone who is truly suitable. The mind can build illusions, but the soul unerringly recognizes the truth. When this deep recognition occurs, anxiety disappears, giving way to quiet confidence. As Carl Jung reminded us, no one can become that person unless the individual becomes it for themselves. The first step towards true love is directed not outward, but inward, towards accepting and choosing oneself. In this case, a relationship with another person becomes not a need, but a valuable gift. Some encounters, even fleeting ones, leave an indelible mark. One gesture, glance, or conversation is enough for the soul to feel the authenticity of the moment. Destined love does not always stay in life forever, but it always leaves its mark, reminding us of who we really are. Do not consider yourself broken because of unrequited love. This is an awakening of feelings and experience of pain that contributes to personal growth. True love does not weaken, but reveals the potential for healing that already exists within. This is the essence of the Jungian understanding of love, as a path to self-discovery. Jung viewed love not as a frozen romantic idyll, but as a process of evolutionary collision with oneself. Love destined by fate not only brings joy, but also forces us to face the most difficult and uncomfortable questions, thereby contributing to spiritual development. It is worth asking, what aspects of personality have awakened since meeting this person? Is this a response from the soul, or a manifestation of a deep need? Carl Jung viewed the self as a striving for wholeness, which every individual should strive for. True love does not lead away from this path, but serves as a powerful stimulus for self-knowledge. If a relationship contributes to the integration of forgotten aspects of personality, the awareness of fears, desires, and even internal contradictions, perhaps this is not just an emotional experience, but a meeting with destiny. It's important to distinguish the intensity of feelings from their truth. Jung emphasized that the unconscious projects with tremendous force. The soul uses another person to convey what the individual is unwilling to acknowledge within themselves. Therefore, love sometimes manifests not as a quiet harbor, but as a sudden shock. However, if this shock propels you towards self-development, don't immediately dismiss it. You need to stop and think about the person who won't leave your mind. Does communicating with them contribute to your spiritual growth? Do you feel freedom despite the difficulties that arise? Is there a constant need to justify your existence? If the answers are positive, even with doubts, you may have encountered something valuable, not perfect, but deeply real. There is a simple but effective way to understand the depth of your feelings for another person. Try to describe your feelings about communicating with them in just 3 words. Then ask yourself an important question. Do these words also reflect how you feel when you are alone with yourself? True love, the kind that is destined, touches the deepest chords of your soul and is not an attempt to fill an inner void. As Carl Jung would say, such love is born not from an obsession, but from mutual recognition. You don't chase after it, but you see it, feel it, and realize that in the presence of this person, you see yourself more clearly and distinctly. At that moment, the chaos of thoughts disappears and emotional clarity ensues. Another sign of a kindred spirit, according to Jung, is a sense of acceptance, even when you are in the process of change and growth. You don't need to wear a mask or promise to become someone you are not yet. You simply remain yourself, and that sincerity is enough to maintain the connection. Remember Jung's wise words. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. If, next to this person, you feel the opportunity to unlock your potential, to become more free and awakened, then this is the love of the soul, not the ego. These are relationships filled with meaning, not need. The author addresses viewers who have been touched by the ideas expressed in the video. He invites them to express their response by leaving the phrase, "I don't chase love, I become it," in the comments. This call sounds like a powerful declaration of emotional independence and self-sufficiency. It emphasizes that true love, intended for a person, will never lead to the loss of oneself. On the contrary, it will become the beacon that, even in the most difficult moments of life, will gently remind you of your true essence. The author refers to the wisdom of Carl Jung, reminding us that a look outward creates dreams, while a look inward leads to awakening. There is a common belief about love as an external goal, about finding the one. However, Jung warns that the real work begins with the realization that every relationship is a path to self-knowledge. Love appears not as a trophy, but as an experience that reveals the personality. Each meeting, consciously or not, becomes a date with one's own shadow, with unhealed wounds, with the need for wholeness. From a Jungian perspective, the choice of a partner is not accidental. A person subconsciously seeks someone who can help them complete a process interrupted in childhood. The missing, the painful, the suppressed, all this is projected in the form of attraction to another person. This is what sheds light on the mystery of why our hearts so often reach out to those who seem completely unsuitable for us. The fact is that the human psyche is not designed to seek comfort and serenity, but for relentless progress, for personal growth and transformation. In this context, love appears not just as a feeling, but as a complex, alchemical process that transforms our souls. As Carl Jung astutely observed, everything that remains beyond our conscious perception inevitably manifests in our lives as a kind of predestination. Many people mistakenly believe that their attraction to certain individuals is a manifestation of fate, while in reality they are driven by deep, unconscious aspects of their own unconscious. Hence the urgent need for awakening, for close observation of oneself, for critical reflection on one's feelings, and awareness of their true sources. Viktor Frankl, for his part, argued that love is a unique tool that allows us to penetrate to the very essence of another person, to comprehend their deep self. This idea is echoed in Jung's ideas, who emphasized that only someone who has managed to establish a strong connection with their own essence is able to truly see and appreciate the essence of another. Thus, it is not just about the ability to experience the feeling of love, but also about having sufficient inner maturity and depth to maintain and develop this feeling. Some individuals are not yet ready for true love, not because they lack feelings, but because they have not dedicated enough attention to exploring their inner world. Karen Horney rightly pointed out that what we often mistake for love is actually a desperate need for someone to alleviate the oppressive feeling of inner emptiness. In such cases, relationships turn into a form of dependence, skillfully disguised as shared anxiety and worry. Jung taught us that love can be an initiatory experience, that not all relationships are meant to last forever, but all of them are meant to teach us something. Even those relationships that cause us pain, even those that end in heartbreak, especially them, because they highlight those corners of our soul that still need healing and enlightenment. When a person finds themselves in a relationship that hinders their personal growth, restricts freedom of expression, and forces them into silence or hypocrisy, they deviate from the path of individuation. Such relationships turn into emotional prisons, whereas true love, by definition, should give freedom, the freedom to be oneself, to express one's thoughts, and to grow. John Bowlby, the founder of attachment theory, argued that childhood experiences have a defining influence on the formation of our relationships. However, Carl Jung went further, emphasizing that a person is capable of deprogramming, dismantling established patterns of behavior, and healing emotional wounds. Genuine love is born when we stop seeking in a partner compensation for our own shortcomings and begin to love consciously, based on the fullness of our self. It is worth considering, if every relationship leads to the loss of oneself, the abandonment of one's own values, identity and life path, then it is not love, but emotional exile. Erich Fromm rightly noted that love is not fusion, but a union that preserves the individuality of each person. By losing oneself, a person does not love, but dissolves into another. Speaking of animus and anima, Jung meant not just the male and female principles, but the internal principles of creation, action, thinking, and connection with the soul. Without integrating these aspects within ourselves, we seek their reflection in another person, confusing attraction with destiny. True love is not an external need, but an internal resonance. Sometimes we wonder why we feel trapped in a relationship. Jung would answer, because we have not realized the lesson that this relationship is meant to teach. The soul does not release what has not been understood, does not let go of what has not yet been deciphered. Only by understanding what exactly the partner is meant to activate in us can we let them go without guilt. Some connections are given not to last forever, but to awaken us. The task of a person, according to Jung, is to learn to distinguish such relationships. Not all deep feelings are meant for a long life together. Sometimes relationships are like internal earthquakes. They shake everything around, mix everything inside, and then fade into the past. The real task is not to hold on to the other person, but to keep oneself whole after this earthquake. Erich Fromm, in his work The Art of Loving, emphasized that love is a decision, a commitment, and a constant practice. Carl Jung undoubtedly would emphasize that genuine love grows from emotional maturity and self-control. It is not enough to simply recognize the feeling, it is necessary to have the ability to sustain it, because, although the soul can instantly recognize a kindred connection, only a mature psyche can withstand the test of time. Jung viewed the process of individuation as the highest form of personal development, emphasizing that in genuine relationships, this process never ceases. If a union requires the abandonment of one's own essence in order to preserve it, then it is not about love, but about emotional pressure. True love, according to Jung, never requires self-sacrifice. True love does not run from the dark sides of personality, but accompanies a person in their exploration. It does not create an idealized image, but sees the person as a whole, with all their strengths and weaknesses, and remains nearby even in moments of weakness. Such love has a transformative power, not solving all the problems for the person, but teaching them to find solutions, relying on new experiences and understanding. Imagine that everything experienced has meaning, that every person encountered on the life path has left their mark, hint, or symbol. Jung believed in this, arguing that every encounter is archetypal, that there are no meaningless events in life. A person lives out the myths of their soul, deciphering their messages and gaining wisdom. In the realm of interpersonal relationships, when the most intimate corners of the soul are touched, the usual flow of time seems to lose its power. Whether this period is measured in days or decades, the key factor becomes the depth and strength of the emotional impact. If a person has managed to penetrate the very essence of your inner world, forcing you to rethink your life principles, emotional wounds, and decisions, you should not underestimate the significance of this event. It may not be the happy ending to your story, but it will undoubtedly serve as an important point of reflection. Healing love does not manifest in constant smiles and cloudless happiness, but in the ability to speak the truth no matter how painful it may be. It is a love that does not turn away in moments of your vulnerability, that even in the most difficult times supports you with its gaze and words. I am here, not to save you from problems, but to share the journey. The soul craves this kind of presence, not saviors, but faithful companions. As Jung said, he promised not easy paths, but paths leading to truth. In the context of love, this means that confidence does not come instantly. However, by learning to see with the eyes of the soul, to feel with the heart, despite past wounds, you can recognize a genuine connection. Such a connection brings freedom, even when you are not alone. When someone awakens dormant parts of your personality that you never knew existed, it doesn't always mean meeting your soulmate. Rather, it speaks to the emergence of that version of yourself that has long awaited its hour. Destined love is not an addition that completes your image, but a detonator that unlocks your potential. Jung emphasized that you should not look for in the external world what can only be built within yourself. If a relationship has arisen in your life that exposes all the painful points, everything that you have tried to deny and avoid, do not rush to run away from it. Stop and take a closer look at yourself. Perhaps this person appeared for a reason. Instead of staying in a person's life forever, they appeared to teach them invaluable lessons that they would never have been able to learn on their own. They are not looking for a soulmate, but rather a revelation of truth that will change their view of the world. To love truly is to consciously choose a person, taking into account all their virtues and flaws, their light and dark sides, and, despite everything, deciding to walk hand in hand with them, not as a savior, but as a faithful companion and witness to their life. As the famous psychologist Carl Jung asserted, mature love is not a promise of eternal idyll, but rather an obligation to be sincerely and fully involved in another person's life, supporting them in all their endeavors. Sometimes people mistakenly take strong emotional experiences for love, but such intensity of feelings may be nothing more than an addiction to chaos and unpredictability. Jung and other prominent psychologists, such as Karen Horney, emphasize that the soul strives for order and harmony, especially after it has experienced many upheavals and disorders. Therefore, when a person who brings peace and tranquility, instead of dizzying passion, meets you on your life path, you should not think that it is boring and uninteresting. Perhaps this is exactly the sign you have been waiting for so long. Many relationships fail because one of the partners is still looking for confirmation of their significance, as in childhood. Instead of looking for an equal partner, they subconsciously seek a parental figure who will care for, guide, and unconditionally love them. The burden of emotional wounds is unbearable for love alone. Here, the tools of therapy, deep self-knowledge, and a painstaking process of healing are needed. This is an undeniable truth. The shackles of unresolved traumas hinder freedom in love. Genuine feeling does not erase personality, but rather strengthens the connection with oneself. If the presence of another person oppresses, forces you to betray your own principles, and distances you from your life goals, then this is not love, but a painful attachment, an unhealed wound, an unconscious repetition of negative experience. In such a situation, the task is not to return the partner, but to find oneself. A common mistake is to seek relationships as a way to fill inner emptiness. However, as Jung asserted, suppressed experiences will sooner or later take over. If a person has not found harmony with themselves in solitude, then love becomes only a form of escape, and any escape, no matter how attractive it may seem, ultimately turns into a prison. Mature love implies that a partner is not called upon to fill emotional gaps, but to accompany one on the path of healing them. Such love does not require perfection, but values sincere presence, does not ask for unjustified sacrifices, but craves authenticity. It would seem that this is an elementary truth, but it represents one of the most serious emotional dilemmas in a person's life. If an individual feels that interacting with a certain person drains their energy rather than replenishing it, it is imperative to immediately cease such a connection. The inner voice, like a reliable compass, always warns of impending danger, but unfortunately, only a few who have maintained vigilance of spirit are able to hear its quiet whisper. It is worth paying close attention to the signals the body sends in the presence of that person. How does the breathing rhythm change? How peaceful does sleep become? The body, unlike the mind, is incapable of lying. True love, destined by fate, does not drain life force, but rather gives a feeling of renewal and upliftment. Not everything that glitters and beckons is genuine love. Often it is merely a well-disguised dependence, a gaping void that is attempted to be filled with beautiful but emotionally shallow gestures. The renowned psychologist Carl Jung spoke of the existence of a false self, a mask that each individual wears to survive in a complex world. Many relationships are nothing more than the interaction of two such masks. Genuine love is born only when a person dares to shed this mask, exposing their true essence. If, looking back, an individual realizes that their choice of partner has always been conditioned by the fear of loneliness and abandonment, it is likely that they have never made a free choice. This is not their fault. It is merely a consequence of their emotional trauma. However, once this trauma is recognized and accepted, the former way of loving becomes impossible. The next choice should be dictated not by a desperate need for someone, but by inner awakening and a striving for truth. New love should not be a way of surviving, but a source of inspiration and growth. The soul's aspiration is not for perfect love, but for one that remains true even in moments of imperfection, supporting in doubts and not demanding immediate answers to all questions. It respects the personal path of development without pushing or hurrying. As Jung noted, love is not a cure, but it can serve as fertile ground for self-healing. If love manifests only in moments of strength, smiles, and usefulness, then it is more like emotional comfort than genuine feeling. True love does not judge a person by their functionality, but accepts them entirely. even in a state of vulnerability and emotional darkness, understanding that these aspects are an integral part of the life path. In the process of individuation, there comes a moment of realization that no one can love as much as a person loves themselves. This marks the beginning of a new stage when a person ceases to settle for less, to give themselves to feelings halfway, and to accept emotional crumbs. Jung reminded that both dreams and relationships are filled with hidden symbols that require careful interpretation. When fate brings people together in relationships that seem predestined, it is worth paying attention to which facets of personality are awakened in this union. Perhaps the mind has not yet grasped the full depth of what is happening, but the soul has already grasped the truth. At times, the love that leaves the most indelible mark is manifested not in passionate kisses, but in the ability to reflect the inner world of the partner. It uncovers feelings that a person never even suspected existed, raises questions, generates silence, and exposes vulnerabilities, but at the same time points the way to self-discovery. The value of such love is measured not by its duration, but by its transformative power. Carl Jung spoke of the integration of personality as a process of uniting all its aspects, light and dark sides, tenderness and rage, desires and fears. True love accepts a person entirely, with all their contradictions and imperfections. It does not disappear in moments of weakness, and does not turn away when a person does not meet the ideal. However, not all who teach lessons should remain in life forever. Some people come only in the role of guides or alarm clocks, and true love is manifested in the ability to let them go when their presence ceases to contribute to development and turns into a repetition of the past. Letting go is also an expression of love, and sometimes the greatest act of respect. Do not strive for love to be a constant emotion. It is much more important that it is a source of continuous growth. Passion fades over time, but admiration, trust, and genuine connection are the roots of a love that lasts for many years, a love that the soul recognizes without extra words. It is important to remember that love destined by fate does not require proof and does not ask you to sacrifice yourself for attention. It does not play with time, silence, or mental health. Love that is destined is always clear, honest, and kind. Its character was distinguished by firmness, but without excessive severity. The depth of its nature did not turn into melodrama. In every person's life, relationships arise that are meant to teach the establishment of personal boundaries, while others open doors to the ability to be open and sincere, and still others become a test of strength, teaching one not to stray from oneself. Each connection plays its role, but it is only the individual who decides whether they are ready to grow and develop with it, or prefer to flee from their own essence. When the time comes to love again, let that feeling be born from conscious presence, not from desperate haste. Let it come from the depths of the soul, not from acute need. And before uttering the cherished words, "This person is destined for me," one must ensure their own readiness for it, in the fullness of self-awareness, in the ability to choose and respect oneself, for true and unwavering love begins with self-love. The city of Bogotá was awakening to the accompaniment of a light rain, which monotonously drummed on the windows of cozy cafes and the windows of old apartments in the Chapinero Alto district. Andrés, lost in his thoughts, walked along Carrera Septima, his hands tucked into the pockets of his coat, and a scarf only slightly protected him from the piercing cold that gripped his chest. For several weeks he had been unable to find answers to the questions that tormented him, replaying in his mind the phrase that had haunted him since her departure. How do you know if someone is really meant for you? Lucia appeared in Andrés's life like a bright flash, illuminating his existence with unexpected light. She did not conform to his usual ideas of the ideal, and perhaps that is why she was able to disarm him so quickly. Possessing a soft, soothing voice, she combined it with a piercing gaze and a peculiar manner of asking questions that Andrés himself did not dare to ask. Their meeting took place at a psychology conference at the Javeriana University, which he attended more by chance than out of genuine interest. From that moment on, his world seemed to turn upside down, beginning to spin at a completely different rhythm. The first days of their acquaintance were filled with a dizzying whirlwind of events. Unplanned visits to bookstores in the heart of the city, heartfelt conversations until dawn about the mysteries of the soul, dreams and emotional wounds. Lucia spoke about Jung's teachings with such clarity and depth that it seemed to Andres almost a mystical revelation. "You think you know me," she said one night, "but what you see in me is just a reflection of your own projections." This phrase struck him to the core, and at the same time made him feel an inexplicable infatuation. However, with the same swiftness with which this connection arose, something began to crack. Andres felt a growing anxiety, felt increasingly insignificant and dependent. Every time Lucia distanced herself even slightly, he felt his inner world crumble. He could not understand how he could be so strongly attracted to a person who, without causing him visible harm, made him feel so vulnerable and defenseless. One Sunday evening, after a sudden cancellation of a meeting, Andres secluded himself in his apartment on Calle 59, immersing himself in reading a book that she had kindly provided him, Memories, Dreams, Reflections by Carl Jung. His attention was drawn to a line that he had previously overlooked. What you deny submits you, what you accept transforms you. For the first time it dawned on him that the source of his emotional pain lay not in her, but in the feelings that she had awakened in his soul. Lucia was not the cause of his confusion, but rather a mirror reflecting his inner world. That sleepless night, Andres stared at his reflection in the window, fogged up from the pouring rain. Memories of childhood, of his mother's emotional detachment, of the constant desire to do something outstanding to earn someone's affection, flooded him. "I seek love as if it was something to be earned, not something I deserve by right," he wrote in his diary. He made a firm decision not to call her the next day, guided not by pride, but by the realization of the need to be alone with himself. Going for a walk along Avenida Circunvala, he stopped at the national park, took a deep breath of fresh air, and, watching the passing cars, felt something completely new inside himself. Silence. Days passed, but neither he nor she took the initiative. At first this caused acute pain, but over time it turned into a kind of ritual. Andres began to see a psychotherapist, keep a diary, and analyze his dreams. Dreams haunted him, strings of trains, endless ascents in elevators, doors open to unexplored distances. Manuel, his psychotherapist with an impassive gaze, interpreted this as the voice of the subconscious, signaling a readiness to meet himself. One day, as if by fate, Andres met Lucia again. It happened in a bookstore in the heart of the city, a favorite spot for both of them. She was engrossed in a volume of poetry, and when she noticed him, she offered a warm smile. This time, Andres looked at her differently, not as someone begging for love, but as an equal. "How are you?" she asked. "Discovering myself," he replied. "I'm only at the beginning of the journey." A few minutes passed in conversation, free from dramas and recriminations about past disappearances, just a calm presence and a quiet, almost sacred farewell. Andres didn't feel the usual emptiness. His heart was filled with gratitude. He realized that not every love is meant to last forever. Sometimes it comes to show you the way to your true self. Over time, Andres discovered a gift for writing. Under a pseudonym, he began sharing his reflections on the soul, relationships, and the mysteries of the subconscious in a blog. Readers resonated with his words, connecting with his transformed pain. It was then that he realized another lesson bequeathed by Jung. By integrating your shadow, you become a healer for others. One morning, while flipping through the dusty pages of his past writings, he came across a phrase once written by Lucia in blue ink. "What you notice in me is a reflection of what you are trying not to notice in yourself." A slight smile touched his lips as the meaning of these words finally reached his consciousness. Now, When he looked at another person, he did so not out of inner need, but rather out of a desire to meet his own self. And so, no longer seeing her, no longer needing a resolution or a perfect ending, Andres realized that Lucia was a kind of archetype on his life's path, the embodiment of his anima, his inner feminine principle. It wasn't just a romantic story, but a tale of evolution, a story written in a Jungian key. He stopped wandering aimlessly through the streets in search of faces reminiscent of her image. Now he walked, striving to recognize a new facet of himself in every person he met. Bogotá no longer seemed like a soulless city. It took on symbolic meaning. Every street, cozy cafe, clouds floating over Monserrate, everything became a symbol. Everything became part of his personal journey. As time went on, another woman appeared in his life. Their story was neither epic nor magical. It was calm, sincere, transparent, and that's what made it real. For, as Jung asserted, love is not a passionate infatuation with someone, but a space where both people can find true freedom. Andres grasped this truth not when he met someone new, but in the moment he mustered the courage to let go of the one he had naively believed was his destined fate. For true destiny, he realized, was never about her, but only about returning to himself, to his inner essence. Andres's story is not just a personal drama about love and loss. It is, in essence, a deep analysis of a soul that has encountered a genuine connection, like a Jungian mirror in action. For when it comes to relationships, we are talking not only about attachment, but also about projections, old wounds, and emotional reflections designed to shake up everything that has not yet been healed within us. From the very beginning, Andres and Lucia's relationship was more a reflection of himself than of her. Carl Jung taught that everything we project onto another person, whether it's love, admiration, dependence, or pain, is nothing more than an unconscious part of ourselves that we have not yet managed to integrate. Andres didn't just fall in love with Lucia. He fell in love with his own shadow, which he projected onto her. When Lucia tells him that what he sees in her is only his own projection, she performs an act of unconscious love. She gives him the first clue, the starting point for beginning his long journey of individuation. It is crucial to realize that not every encounter and connection in our lives is destined for eternity. Sometimes their task is much deeper. They are meant to awaken us to a new reality, to make us look at ourselves from a different angle. The question often arises, how do you know if a particular person is meant for us? Depth psychology offers a simple but effective method. Pay close attention to the feelings and reactions that the relationship evokes in us. If our dependencies, fears of being rejected, and insatiable need for approval are activated in the union, then we are most likely not dealing with a fateful story, but with a recurring scenario from the past. The soul reproduces it time and time again in the hope of liberation. Andres's story is an example of this. His healing began not when Lucia stayed, but when she left. As Jung said, the unconscious becomes conscious only when it ceases to satisfy our immediate needs. The pain caused by the separation became the starting point for Andres' awakening. By abandoning the search for Lucia, he was guided not by pride, but by the urgent need to meet himself. This step was profoundly therapeutic for him. Paradoxically, many people seek answers outside themselves, failing to realize that another person is merely a catalyst, not a panacea for all ills. The true solution lies within ourselves, in the willingness to face our fears and dependencies. This passage reveals one of Carl Jung's key ideas, the concept of the self. This refers not to the superficial ego or social role, but to the deep, essential part of the personality that manifests when a person encounters their shadow, recognizes their emotional wounds, and identifies their true aspirations. Andres's love does not fade, it merely transforms, directing itself inward. His walks through Bogotá take on symbolic meaning, becoming rituals of the soul as it gradually inhabits his body. According to Jungian psychology, the surrounding space reflects a person's inner world. When Andres begins to find meaning in familiar landscapes, it signifies his reconciliation with his own subconscious. The image of the therapist, Manuel, also carries deep meaning. He appears not simply as a professional doctor, but as an archetypal guide, a sage, an inner mentor, appearing in Andres's life at the moment when he is ready to face the truth he had previously avoided. The dream of trains, elevators, and doors is full of symbolism. In Jungian interpretation, trains represent life paths, labyrinths of the psyche, and doors symbolize new horizons of consciousness, thresholds that must be crossed. The depths of the unconscious strive to convey their messages, and the subject finally heeds them. In Jungian psychology, relationships appear as an archetypal path to self-knowledge, and that is the role Lucia plays in Andres's life. She is not the one and only predestined fate. Rather, she is a fleeting embodiment of the anima, the inner feminine principle inherent in every man, which becomes a compass on his path of personal growth. It is like a soul taking on human form. The moment when Andres meets her gaze again without trepidation, when the anxiety recedes, when he can look at her without agonizing longing, marks the completion of integration. The projection disappears, giving way to the recognition of the lived experience without any attachment, without a desire for possession. From a psychotherapy perspective, this is genuine healing. It is not simply forgetting, but acceptance, not contempt, but transcendence. Andres does not deny his past feelings, he treats them with respect, but is no longer dependent on them in his pursuit of wholeness. And this is the true completion, which comes not through words, but through awareness. Erich Fromm argued that love is not a fleeting feeling, but a conscious decision, a mature judgment, an unbreakable promise. Ultimately, Andres chooses not the love that stirs the blood, but the love that creates, and he begins this process first and foremost with himself. This analysis reveals a simple truth. Not all that glitters is true love. Often it is merely a game of intensity, a manifestation of emotional dependence. But true love is that which allows both partners to become more and more themselves. This is what Carl Jung called conscious relationships. Many wonder whether to stay in a relationship that generates doubts. Jung would answer with a question: does this relationship bring you closer to your true essence or distance you from it? When a repeated attempt does not bring the desired result, it is more of a temporary emotional relief than a predetermined destiny. The most significant moment in personal development is not the reunion with the past, but the person's awareness of the process of self-discovery. At this moment, like Andres writing in his diary about the beginning of the journey to himself, true humility is born, the dynamics of development are reflected, and sincerity is revealed. According to Jung, this is the first step towards individuation. By transforming their emotional pain into words, whether in a blog or a personal message, a person performs an act of great strength. The wounded soul shares its light, emanating not from perfection, but from the authenticity of the lived experience and the lessons learned. Thus the individual becomes a symbol of hope and inspiration for others. Perhaps many of the readers have experienced a loss similar to that of Andres, and that pain is still felt. However, the key question is not the reasons for the other person's departure, but what aspects of the personality were awakened by this experience. What new things were you able to see in yourself? What lost qualities were returned? Perhaps this person's role was only to remind you of your own worth. Maybe the point is not to build long-term relationships, but to restore the integrity of your own self. Jung focused not on happy endings, but on the completion of internal processes. Sometimes the story ends with a farewell, and that's okay. This analysis is not intended to amplify suffering, but to help recognize what has happened, take control of your story, and stop empowering those who were unable to provide support. It is important to transform your perception of events. As Jung stated, knowing your own darkness is the most effective way to deal with the darkness emanating from others. The author encourages readers to actively participate and self-analyze, suggesting they reflect on the underlying motives for seeking love and relationships. If the story resonated and made you rethink your own aspirations, you are invited to share your thoughts in the comments, writing, "I am ready to stop looking outside for what I can only find inside." The widespread notion of love as a search for a missing part of oneself in another person is questioned. It is emphasized that attraction to someone may not be so much a need for completion, but rather a signal from the soul calling for self-knowledge and introspection. The question is asked, is what is often taken for love actually a fear of loneliness and an inability to be alone with oneself? The author suggests considering how often people seek in others the recognition and admiration that they do not feel for themselves, and how often they confuse the need for company with true salvation. Carl Jung's words are quoted, "Love is not the search for another person, but the search for oneself through another." In this regard, the question is asked, what part of the personality desperately needs attention, while the person stubbornly looks for the problem in the external world? In conclusion, a radical change of approach is proposed. Instead of striving to find love that will choose, love, and accept, one should make a decision to stop rejecting and betraying oneself. What will happen if, at this very moment, a person stops and says to themselves, "Enough running away from myself, enough trying to become someone else, enough chasing after what is alien to my true essence"? Is it possible, in their opinion, to experience love without becoming dependent? Are they capable of loving without dissolving into another person? Can they imagine a union where there is freedom without fear, vulnerability without shame, and authenticity without fear of punishment? Why have they, for so long, considered this an unaffordable luxury? Are they ready to be alone with themselves long enough to know themselves before opening up to another? Are they ready to stop pursuing those who do not notice them, and look at themselves with new eyes, full of the unconditional love and tenderness they have so craved from the outside? Have they wondered where their preferences in love originate? Are they a conscious choice or a disguised repetition of past mistakes? Does the person they so passionately desire really see their true self or merely confirm their vulnerability? Does this person build them up or tear them down? If they had no fear today, who would they let go of? Who would they stop waiting for? What truth would they allow themselves to speak? What loneliness would they open the door to, not as punishment, but as a valuable lesson? And what if their love story is not about finding someone, but about finding themselves, so that when that someone appears, they do not need to save them or complete them, but merely share the joy of who they already are? How would that change their approach to love? Isn't it time to write a new story, born not out of need, but out of conscious choice? The moment comes when a person stops hiding in the shadow of fear of loss and boldly demonstrates their true essence, realizing their own worth. Perhaps fate is not a predetermined person, but the individual themselves, awakening to self-knowledge. And then from the depths of this conscious truth, any love that enters life becomes not a refuge from loneliness, but a reflection of the inner world. Such love is not an excuse for one's own weaknesses, but an expansion of horizons, not a necessity, but a conscious choice. If these words resonated with your soul, awakened important questions, and became a ray of light in the process of self-discovery, it is worth capturing the phrase in the comments, "True love begins when I stop running away from myself." Say it with conviction as a statement of intent, because the understanding has come. Life calls to stop looking in the external world for what can only blossom within. The author expresses gratitude for the viewers staying until the end, choosing this space for healing, growth, and reflection. This is not only about love, but also about the consciousness that allows you to rethink and rebuild everything around you. Until next time in the following videos, where the journey to the depths of the soul through word, truth, and love will continue.